Welcome to Ego and Empathy, the podcast where we explore the psychology behind everyday behavior. I'm your host, Mandy, and today we're diving into a topic that's both fascinating and, let's be honest, often misunderstood: narcissism. You've probably heard the term used everywhere, from pop culture to social media. He's such a narcissist. She only thinks about herself. But what does narcissism really mean? And when does it cross the line from a personality trait into something more serious? A disorder? Let's unpack that. What is narcissism? At its core, narcissism comes from the Greek myth of Narcissus, a man who fell in love with his own reflection. It's a story that perfectly captures the essence of this trait: excessive self-focus and a need for admiration. But here's the thing. We all have a bit of narcissism in us. It's not automatically bad. A healthy level of self-esteem, confidence, and ambition, those are adaptive forms of narcissism. They help us believe in ourselves, take risks, and achieve goals. The problem begins when this self-focus becomes extreme, when a person's need for validation and power starts to hurt others or distort reality. That's when we talk about pathological narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. So how can we recognize narcissism when we see it? According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM-5, someone with narcissistic personality disorder typically shows at least 5 of these traits: a grandiose sense of self-importance, a preoccupation with fantasies of success, power, beauty, or brilliance, a belief that they're special and can only be understood by other special people, a constant need for admiration, a sense of entitlement, exploitative behavior, using others to achieve their own ends, a lack of empathy, envy of others or belief that others are envious of them, and often arrogant or haughty behaviors and attitudes. Now, that sounds pretty harsh, and it is. But it's important to remember that narcissism exists on a spectrum. Not everyone who's self-centered or confident is a narcissist. It's only when these traits become rigid, pervasive, and harmful that they form a disorder. So, why do some people develop narcissistic traits? Psychologists believe narcissism often stems from a combination of genetic, environmental, and social factors. For example, a child who receives excessive praise without learning empathy or boundaries might develop an inflated sense of self. On the other hand, a child who experiences neglect or emotional abuse might create a false self, a mask of superiority to protect their fragile self-esteem. Underneath the surface, narcissists often struggle with deep insecurity and a fragile sense of self-worth. Their arrogance is like armor. It hides a profound fear of not being good enough. That's one of the paradoxes of narcissism. It looks like confidence, but it's often rooted in shame and vulnerability. If you've ever been in a relationship, romantic, professional, or even familial, with a narcissistic person, you know how draining it can be. At first, they might seem charming, confident, and charismatic. But over time, the dynamic can shift. They crave admiration, but they give very little empathy in return. They might manipulate others, gaslight them, making them question their own reality, and turn every situation back to themselves. This is why relationships with narcissists often follow a cycle: idealization, devaluation, and discard. First, they put you on a pedestal. You're amazing. You're perfect. Then, once you're emotionally invested, they start to criticize, control, or devalue you. And finally, they may withdraw completely, leaving you confused and hurt. It's a painful pattern, but understanding it can be the first step to breaking free from it. Can narcissists change? This is a big question, and a controversial one. The short answer is, it's difficult but not impossible. Because narcissism is deeply tied to one's identity, it takes significant self-awareness, humility, and long-term therapy to make progress. And that's the challenge. Most narcissists don't believe they have a problem. They often externalize blame, making personal growth very hard. However, when they're motivated, say by a crisis or the loss of a relationship, therapy that focuses on empathy, emotional regulation, and self-reflection can help them build healthier patterns. Some experts argue that we're living in what they call a narcissism epidemic. Social media rewards self-promotion, attention-seeking, and the creation of a personal brand. Likes, followers, and validation become a form of social currency. And while not everyone online is narcissistic, this environment can encourage narcissistic traits, especially in younger generations, still forming their sense of identity. The takeaway? It's not about rejecting confidence or ambition. It's about balancing them with empathy, authenticity, and connection. So, to sum it all up, narcissism isn't always bad. A little self-focus is part of being human. But when it becomes excessive, rigid, and harmful to others, it can turn into a serious personality disorder. Underneath the grandiosity, narcissism often hides insecurity and pain. And while change is possible, it takes deep self-reflection and professional help. If you're dealing with a narcissistic person, remember, it's not your job to fix them. Your responsibility is to protect your own emotional well-being and to set boundaries rooted in respect and self-worth. That's it for today's episode of Ego and Empathy. If you found this topic helpful, share it with someone who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe. Next week, we'll be exploring the psychology of emotional manipulation and how to spot it early. Thanks for listening, and take care of your mind. Until next time.